The answer lies somewhere between. Damage is more likely to happen when either approach, either side of a two-sided issue, nigh completely ignores the other. So you don't want to have too much white, you don't want to have too much black, you want to find that gray area. And I think in terms of politics, you're looking at it instead of white and black, you'd look at it as left and right. And I would like to create a larger center where it's more of a political sphere and everybody is welcome to communicate with other people without guilt by association, or as my friend Tyler says, guilt by conversation, where you're not allowed to speak with certain people because they're part of certain political faction. That kind of censorship, limiting of information, and limiting of dialogue is not conducive to human progress. We need to keep science going. We need to continue science, continue the conversation, and keep the great big ball of information that is the internet rolling down the hill. And only that way will we find enlightenment. Some areas are naturally lopsided, with either mindset being the better approach. So what this means is that, let's look at it as left and right, for example. In some cases, the left has a more realistic, pragmatic, or constructive opinion about something in general, not to put them in a box. And likewise, I don't want to put the right in a box, but sometimes they have the better approach to a particular issue or point. For example, in a strictly dualistic binary world, you'd say that the left has socialism and the right favors capitalism. They both have elements of both in most economic systems, which are big old gray areas. But, and I would say I think the right does that better. And in terms of abortion, I would say that I would side more with the left, personally, because for me, I consider myself pro-choice, and I do see a bit of an authoritarian. I usually take a pro-liberty stance on most issues, but I do see the argument that a mother taking a child's right to live away is an authoritarian choice on the mother's behalf. But unfortunately, yes, it would be a more moral situation if life began at conception. I think most people can agree on that. It would be more moral. Of course, moralism can be in some ways subjective, or morality can be subjective in some ways, depending on how you size things up. But I think we can almost objectively agree that any form of killing and murdering falls under evil or immoral, and thus abortion for me isn't something that is necessarily moral. It's just something that it can be moral. There can be more harm if the baby lives in some cases, for not only the child but the mother and the father as well. There is a question to be asked, and who is the ultimate authority on this? The child can't be, so the parents or the government can be. And it's people's, the argument really rests between those two options. And for me, it belongs with the woman. Okay? It's easier, I don't want to say that the man should necessarily recuse himself, but for me, it does rest on the woman's decision, her body, her decision. And I know that the right, or conservatives, in many cases, if you want to split it right and left, you're going to get a lot of imperfections in analyzing it and describing it that way. But in terms of conservatives that have traditional values and may have a pro-life mindset, my view might conflict just a bit. I don't know where life begins precisely. I don't know where it's productive to have life begin. It's a very complex issue. But I believe it should be the woman's choice. And it's like with many cases, there are pros and cons to both approaches. And we think we need to keep that in mind. agree or disagree. No matter what the consensus might be, it's a lot of times it comes down to personal perspective and little else. It comes down to personal preference because who is to say what is truly objectively moral and immoral? Okay. If you have any thoughts on this issue, it's a very complicated topic, please leave a comment below and we can discuss that in further detail. Or catch me at RealJeffTidwell on Twitter. And you can, of course, leave a comment or a reply on the video, on the tweet that this video is linked to. And that way we can start a dialogue there. So applying a one-size-fits-all filter and being an absolutist on too many issues might be a bad course of action for getting to an equitable solution for all. Okay? You need to look at things with more nuance and allow that maybe the other side, if you're looking at it as the other, maybe the other side might have some merit to their perspective. And I think that should be recognized and judged. You be the judge. You determine whether or not there is a credibility there with their side. You look into it. You do the research. And you might find on certain issues, you might find you become more woke or you become more red-pilled. And I found myself, when I thought that I had a very solid opinion about a specific issue, may it be abortion or any other hot button or divisive issue, or even some simpler ones, I found with more information and more perspectives that my opinion shifted slightly as well. Okay, because our opinions are assigned by the environment and by the media and by other people. And of course, if we don't have an open mind, then we can never change. And sometimes, unless you already have that right think, you've already figured everything out. Spoiler alert, you haven't. I haven't. Nobody has figured everything out. That's the human condition. And we need to keep the door, our echo chamber, as wide as possible. Like, yes, it's easier to slide into a specific perspective and have a community that agrees largely with your views. You can bounce ideas off of those you agree with. You can bounce ideas off of those you disagree with. So it is comfortable to be in the echo chamber, but you need to keep that door cracked. Otherwise, you might asphyxiate on your own farts. And nobody wants to die on their own farts. That would not be great. Not the way to go. Not the way that God intended.